Here I have a couple of sections set up and a guide curve. And you'll notice that I have, these are sketches, and I have various axes set up, datum axes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another sketch at this third location. The reason why I have all this in here is I need these for references. The way these are set up is the axes are positioned at normal to this curve. These give me a vertical reference to use when I'm positioning my sketch. These start and end points and the midpoint are a locator for my sketch that I'm going to create. This helps me control the sketch completely. When I go into my sketch icon, first thing I want to make sure is my plane method is set to existing plane. The plane that I'm going to use in this case is this far back one. And you'll notice by default the sketch wants to appear way up here. But I don't want that. I want to control it better on this plane. Next is my reference. For the reference, I'm going to set it as a vertical reference, which is going to be this datum axis. And you'll notice my y-axis is now parallel. Last thing I need to do is specify my origin point. My origin point is this endpoint. And what this does is it locks the sketch down at that location. So if I make a modification, which I will be, to this spline, which is going to act as my guide curve, I know that my sketch is going to travel along logically with that spline. Now, the last thing I want to do is, and this is just me being me, is for these other sketches, the normal, my Z direction was pointing out. And I just like to make sure that things remain constant and consistent through my model, so I'm going to double click on the Z axis because I want to reverse it. And as I reverse it, I get my x-axis pointing to the right where I want. Of course, y is pointing up and z is pointing towards me. I'll select OK, enter in my sketch, and then here I will draw in my hexagon. I'll go in, I want my spline endpoint, or my sketch origin, as you can see. And for this, I want to make sure that my orientation is similar to my others. So I'll come in here and I will snap in my hexagon. If you want to, you can go through and you'll note that there's a line that this gets created in this area for helping to position the hex. I'm fine with the location of where it's at. I don't need to constrain it any further. I'll finish my sketch. Now that I have my sketch completed, I'm going to go through and create my swept. Now for my swept, I'm going to specify these three as sections. What I want to make sure of when I'm specifying my sections that I'm always picking in a similar location. So that's my first section. It's my feature curves is set, so it picks all of those curves. I'm going to middle mouse button and it's going to prompt me for my second section. I'll specify in a similar area on my second section and a third section again in a similar area. I want to make sure that these points align. As the swept is going to be built, it's going to position these points and lock them together, and then it's going to build in the direction of that arrow. So I want to make sure that the arrow is also pointing in the correct direction. So this anchor point is critical that you're paying attention to it because I have more than one section. Next, I want a guide curve. This is my guide curve, and you'll notice as soon as I select it, it puts in my guide curve. Once I have my guide curve in place, I want to make sure my alignment is set to parameter and I want to preserve shape. That way I get my hard corners. And for this, I'll just leave orientation method. Everything is set as such. Now that I have all of that created, any modifications that I make will be predictable. So if I go into my spline and pull this control point, you'll notice that as my spline moves, my sections move. As my sections move, just hit cancel, my swept updates along with it. If I were to go in here now and modify the sketch, I'll give it a little twist, in fact. We'll finish. You'll notice at the end point, this comes in and twists to that new point. So I'll do a little bit more of a twist. And as you can see, it comes in, wraps around, and twists to that point. So swept is an incredibly powerful tool. How you set things up for the swept, how you want to control things, can also be a fairly simple, very easy parametric setup that allows you to basically attain any shape that you want. Now, again, I simply used a spline. I put in planes at the end points and one at the center point. If I needed to have additional sections, I could dump additional datum planes in at those locations, and make sure I put a point in at that location so I can position my sketch, the origin of the sketch, to that location as well.